Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 27th, 2025. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Gary Glass joins us to talk about his role as head brewer of Left Hand Brewing in Longmont, Colorado, and his new job as founding board member of the newly independent American Homebrewers Association. Gary answers your questions from email and Facebook. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and thanks to everybody who was helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. Financial supporters have already seen the video episode I'm planning to post this Friday. It's the one where Steve and I taste my hoppy Belgian golden ale that I brewed with Imperial Gnome and dry hopped with Nectaron and Idaho 7. It's also the beer where I faced a couple of challenges, including a broken control cable that made me drag out my old propane setup from the basement to complete the boil. That beer turned out great despite the challenges. That brew day taught me a couple of things that I hope I remember. First, maintain your equipment. I knew that the control cable was wearing out after several years of use. It was getting all loose at the end, and I should have replaced it before it failed completely. But, I got lazy. What can I say? And second, the second lesson, never get rid of any of your old brewing gear. Hoarding is totally beneficial. Nothing wrong with it at all. Kind of kidding. Just kidding on that second part. Kind of kidding. A while back, I got rid of a bunch of extra carboys, and I did ditch some old gear that I know that I will never use. But luckily, I hung on to the propane burner. But, I've also used that thing to deep fat fry some stuff, too. So, multi-purpose. Along with the early release, financial supporters received the recipe for the golden ale and a behind-the-scenes video showing how the brew day unfolded. My Bock is on tap now and tasting delicious, at least to my palate. I kegged it 9 days after brewing. I fermented it at 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13°C, bringing it out for a diacetyl rest after about 3 days. It's a little darker than I anticipated, but it's delicious. I showed it to Adam Ross of Twinspan over Zoom as we recorded an interview with Rob Brennan of Supermoon Beer Company in Milwaukee. That was a great conversation, which you will hear next week. Susan, Adam, and I got to go to Supermoon in July of last year. Rob produces incredible beers in a small space that many of them are the result of long-term mixed fermentation, both in stainless and in barrels. He also produces shorter-term beers, too. He has an excellent story, and Adam and I could have talked to Rob for hours. So look for that next week. I brewed my Bock with L18 Goat, the seasonal lager yeast from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. Because this was a fairly big beer that I fermented at lager temperature, I did make a starter, although Goat zipped through that 2 liters of wort in a very short amount of time. So, I'm wondering if it was really necessary, but better to be safe than sorry. Either way, I chilled the 1066 Bock wort down to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, as I said before, 13°C. I pitched the dregs of the starter, aerated with oxygen, belt and suspenders, and put it into the kegerator to get to work. And my airlock wasn't bubbling before bedtime, but it was certainly bubbling before breakfast. L18 Goat fermented very cleanly, and I can't wait to share it with the guys. Those 200 billion cells in each packet of Imperial yeast really get the job done. Bruce from Imperial says that there are some more fun releases coming from Imperial in March. I can't say more at this time, but I can say I'm looking forward to formulating some recipes to go along with them. So stay tuned for more information about that. Ask your local homebrew store about L18 Goat from Imperial Yeast. It's the current seasonal yeast. Take advantage of the cold tap water for your chiller and brew you a lager. Keep an eye out for the new strains from Imperial coming soon, and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. It's going to be close, in the 70s this week here in Arkansas. So, the tap water will be cold for a while. Take a little while for that to catch up. Okay, we've gotten to know Gary Glass over the years as we talked to him as director of the American Homebrewers Association. He's now the head brewer at Left Hand Brewing and brewing delicious beers to send across the country 60 barrels at a time. But he's a homebrewer at heart, and now back into the fold at the AHA to help launch the next chapter in the organization's future. Gary Glass, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, great to be with you, James.
The last time we saw each other was, I believe, in San Diego. We had a very brief interview, and that was the first time that I had talked to you in your capacity as head brewer of Left Hand Brewing. So I'm very excited in that now. Right. I've got some beer here that of yours that I'm going to be sipping as we talk. So welcome.
Excellent, thank you. That's also my recollection. I was trying to think when the last time we were on. I'm like, oh yeah, we did a little interview at HomebrewCon in San Diego.
So catch us up. I mean, we talked to you many times as director of the American Homebrewers Association, and you left there, and then how did you wind up with Left Hand?
So in 2020, during COVID, the Brewers Association laid off 40% of the staff, and I was part of that 40%. So that's why I ended up leaving the American Homebrewers Association. Actually, the current executive director of the American Homebrewers Association, Julia Hers, was working for the Brewers Association in a different capacity, and she was also laid off at that time. So we have that in common. She is a dear personal friend of mine. Being laid off from the American Homebrewers Association after 20 years with the organization, I had not really thought about what else I might ever do, and it did occur to me at that time. It's like, well, I've thought about being a professional brewer, but never wanted to leave my previous occupation. So it presented an opportunity. So I applied for a shift brewer job at Left Hand Brewing Company, which is conveniently a mile away from my house. Miraculously, our head brewer at the time, Adam Lawrence, was gracious enough to hire this guy who had lots of industry experience, but had never actually brewed professionally. I'm still not sure why he chose to hire me, but I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, Adam. So then I started as a shift brewer, working all 3 shifts, including overnights, and had a very, very steep learning curve to be. I know the basics about brewing as a home brewer since 1993. Wow. But no amount of home brewing prepares you for running a centrifuge or a flash pasteurizer. So there was definitely a lot to learn. Rose up to lead brewer, and then got promoted to assistant head brewer, and then Adam chose to move on to a different brewery, and I somehow ended up being handed the head brewer job.
Wow. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
I love what I do. It's great.
And to a brewery that, in my mind, has a really good reputation, especially around one particular beer, which is what I'm sipping on, or a version of. I'm sipping on here. I've got the Nitro Milk Stout, and it is
our top seller.
Oh, it's creamy and delicious, and we'll get into some of the details, I'm sure, in a bit. I went to the local liquor store and in Fayetteville, Liquor World, and they had 11 of your beers, and I chose 3 of them. I got the Nitro Milk Stout. I got the Zesty Dreams Nitro Meyer Lemon Blonde Ale. Ryan Heitzkobot be damned. And
Indeed.
And then I got the Oktoberfest, which you kind of winced when you saw that I had an Oktoberfest because I looked at the canning date and it was like July of last year.
That's about right. So it's definitely past its best buy date, but that beer holds up really, really well.
It did, and I
one of my personal favorites.
I was thinking of it as Oktoberfest or lagers like that, nice clean lagers like that. They're kind of like the cheese pizza of beers, in that if you want to test, in my opinion, if you want to test the quality of a pizzeria, you go and you get the cheese pizza, and if they can get that right, then it's a good pizzeria. And this Oktoberfest was really delicious. In fact, I got a 6-pack, and that unopened one is the only one left. It's over the weekend. I hit it pretty hard. Nice and super clean. But I mentioned the lemon beer. You guys are really having a lot of fun. Now, there are some beer snobs out there that might be a little bit skeptical about some of these beers. You got the Candy Cane Nitro Imperial Peppermint Milk Stout, the Belgian White Nitro Belgian style beer, the Imperial Stout, the Peanut Butter Milk Stout, and there are some others. So you're really having fun with flavors and kind of stepping outside the lines a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely make lots of traditional beers, and I think that Oktoberfest is outstanding. In fact, it won a bronze medal at the Great American Beer Festival last year.
Congratulations!
Yeah, but I mean, these days, like we try to appeal to a wide audience of beer drinkers. So, and we're distributed in 45 states. So we do need to appeal to a wide group of people. And there's I'm not necessarily one who seeks out fruit beers. That Zesty Dreams. We also have a CO2 version of it called Meyer Lemon that we are actually putting into Bright Tank today, and that will be out soon. That's very much a lemon forward beer, but very quenching, and it's really honestly, it's one of the few fruit beers that we make that's a go-to for me.
Yeah,
I do really like that beer.
Again, I was a little skeptical of, but I tried one last night and I liked it a lot. It'd be the perfect summer beer.
Exactly.
The Nitro gives it a nice creamy, I don't want to say creamsicle, but because it's not that sweet. But it's a nice creamy character in the beer. The Meyer lemon flavor is not like Lemon Pledge. It's not artificial tasting. It's nice and fresh, and it's kind of like a Radler or a Shandy kind of a thing. I liked it. I shouldn't have been skeptical, and which it makes me wonder, all the other beers that are waiting for me back at Liquor World.
I appreciate the skepticism, and that it turns out you actually do enjoy that beer. Like I said, I feel the same way, but that particular beer I really do enjoy.
Now, I'm having you on for
a guilty pleasure for me.
Yes. I'm having you on because of 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted to talk about Left Hand, but then also, the AHA has got you back. You're back with the American Homebrewers Association. Talk about what capacity that you're with the AHA now.
Sure. So the AHA is going through a transition phase right now, and we're moving into separating from the parent organization, which is the Brewers Association, which was founded by the American Homebrewers Association.
It's like they're kicking grandma out of the house. You're going to.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Julia deserves all the credit for getting us to this point, and it's just the current circumstances with the brewing industry and with home brewing really made it hard for the Brewers Association to be able to focus on the AHA, and so I think this is an opportunity for homebrewers like me. So I'm on the board of directors of the new organization as we transition away from the Brewers Association. But it gives an opportunity for the organization to be more focused on our members and on homebrewers. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's the right move, and I think it will ultimately be the best thing we can do for the members of the American Homebrewers Association.
Is it almost like starting over?
No, thankfully. So right now, I know Julia Herz, the executive director of the American Homebrewers Association, is working on lining up an association management company. So a lot of smaller associations, like the size of the AHA, use association management companies that do kind of the day-to-day operations. So that will take a lot of stress off of Julia, who will remain on as the executive director of the AHA, and make it easier for us to execute and support members, and give the board's focus more on things like events and competitions and the magazine and all of those other things that the AHA does.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Was I'm assuming that the AHA and the Brewers Association shared resources, some staff members and certainly office space and things like that. Is your relationship with this other outside organization kind of going to kind of relieve some of that pressure on your resources?
Correct. Yeah. So that's certainly the Brewers Association does bring a lot of resources with it, and so that is certainly one of the concerns. But and that is what the association management company does, is they have, the office space for people who deal with member services and provide websites and just operational support. So yes, that would be kind of taking the place of some of that support staff from the Brewers Association. And I will say that this is a very amicable relationship between the AHA and the Brewers Association. It's just I think we both recognize that this move is in the best interest of both organizations in order for us to better fulfill the needs of our individual members. So I would anticipate continuing to get, and they are helping to fund the transition and providing a lot of support. In fact, we had our board retreat a couple of weeks ago, and we met at the Brewers Association offices.
Yeah, before we get too far away from it, and I forget, who is the rest of your team on the board and associated with the new board?
There's Drew Beecham. Let's see, Sandy Cockram.
I've got your cheat sheet here. I've got.
Okay.
If I can read it, my glasses are. Shauna
Cormier.
Yeah, Drew Beecham, Sandy Cockram, Gary Glass, and Greg Raskoff. Raskoff, along with with Julia Herz, of course.
Thank you. That should all roll off my tongue, and
for
whatever reason, being on camera.
Yeah, exactly. You're under pressure. You're under pressure. I wasn't planning to use my sound effects this interview, but there you go. So we've got some questions. I asked you if you wouldn't mind if I asked Facebook for questions. So we've got questions about both Left Hand and the AHA, but. Talk a bit about the status of home brewing. I mean, I have talked to people who I've been associated with in the industry, for many years, and just over the past few years, it sounds like there's just been a sort of a falling off of the cliff of home brewing. for various reasons. I mean, what is the state of the hobby right now in your impression, your observation?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little bit out of the loop for the last 5 years, whereas I was definitely had my fingers on the pulse when I was director of the AHA. I don't know exactly how things are going, but I do know like we've seen some drop off in participation in events and things. And homebrewing has throughout its history kind of had some ups and downs. So I certainly know that was the case in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then picked back up in around 2005 and went strong, and then kind of peaked probably around like 2018, 2019 would be my guess from my recollection. So I think this is kind of part of the cyclical nature, and part of that also is that there are so many craft breweries out there now.
Mm-hmm.
So many 9,000 breweries in the United States, and most of those were started by homebrewers. So it's a transition for some people from homebrewing to craft brewing and professional brewing. And that availability of beers and local breweries may impact the incentive for people to get into the hobby or to be brewing as frequently as perhaps they were in the past.
And Desiree and Dave, formerly of High Gravity, said they most of their biggest customers went commercial or went pro.
Right. Yeah.
And so
yeah. I think that's been true of a lot of the local homebrew supply shops. Is their best customers are the ones that are brewing all the time because they're getting ready to open a brewery, and then they open a brewery and
there you go.
Yeah, a big chunk of their business just went away.
Yeah. Well, I think. I don't know. It's hard to. I mean, there are still adamant and enthusiastic homebrewers out there for sure. And what I think we've seen is kind of we're back to the core, maybe. So I think that there's still a strong group out there. It's just fewer of us, maybe. Absolutely,
and it's it's still a very strong group. Because thinking back to when I started at the AHA in January of 2000, we had fewer than 9,000 members. Now the AHA has over 23,000 members.
Wow.
So it's still in a much better position than it was back when I got started and with this as a profession, even though it was amateur.
I was dusting off the shelves the other day, as one does in the kitchen, and I counted my souvenir HomebrewCon / Homebrewers Conference glasses, and I've got 16. So I went to 16 HomebrewCons and homebrewers conferences. Is one of the goals of the new organization to bring us back in person?
Yes, yeah, that is a very high priority for Julia and for the AHA board of directors. Is like we recognize how important it is to have that national gathering of homebrewers. We are anticipating we will have a HomebrewCon in 2026.
Oh, nice. And I remember back in my day, Steve and I first went to the conference in Orlando in 2006, and you can go back on in our archives and see the videos. But like Pro Night took place under one little tent. I remember that. And Club Night was in this one room of the convention center, but the enthusiasm and the energy in there, and I can't remember. It must have been just a few hundred people who attended. You might remember more than I.
Yeah,
But
I don't remember exactly the number, but it was probably somewhere like 300 to 500.
yeah, it sounds about right. But boy, that was a lot of fun. So, are there? You may be too early to talk about this, but are you thinking of starting smaller like that again before, like 35? I think the biggest was like what, 3,500 or something like that 1 year, which is a lot.
Yeah, I think our max was at Portland in 2018. Yeah, I really don't know any details at this point. We're just getting started, but it probably is not going to be Portland, Oregon size. Probably not going to be in a convention center, but these are details that will determine in the hopefully not too distant future.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm optimistic, and I wish you guys luck. We've got questions from listeners. Let's start with the brewery ones, shall we? This is about Left Hand. Martin on Facebook says, as someone from Sweden, who's their current distributor here, if we have one? We haven't seen their beers for a long time. So that's a good problem to have, not having people wanting your beers in Sweden.
Yeah. Let's make sure that Martin can get our beers. We do. I had to look this one up. I knew we were in Sweden. I just didn't know who our distributor was. But so I asked our chief operating officer, and he said Great Brands is our distributor in Sweden. And I also know that Oliver Twist in Stockholm does have our beers. So you can go visit Oliver Twist in Stockholm.
There you go, Martin. Jake says, I'd like to hear Gary's thoughts on achieving balance in milk stouts, finding the right sweetness to have a good drinkability without being overly sweet or cloying. And Jake also says, I'd like to hear if he has any advice on designing nitro beers differently from a typical carbonated beer in terms of recipe design and flavor perception. Is the recipe different when you're carbonating with CO2 and carbonating nitro, or is it the same stuff?
Yeah, to take on that part of that question, it depends. So I think the biggest consideration that we make with nitro beers is, I guess the way I look at it is I think about carbonic acid that you get in CO2 beers as an ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the beer is going to need some level of acidity to pop as a nitro beer, we might be adding some more acidity to beers that are specifically designed to be nitrogenated. That's not universal across the board. So like that Zesty Dreams, we have both a CO2 and a nitro version of that beer. And because we use lemon puree, it's already quite acidic. It really does not need any more acidity added to it. So really in that case, like the CO2 version, you're going to get a little bit more pop and sharpness from the carbonic acid that's going to increase an already pretty acidic beer. In the nitro version, it's going to kind of round out that acidity and enhance the drinkability. So with milk stout, similarly, we don't change the recipe between the CO2 version and the nitro version. But if you try them side by side, they're noticeably different because that carbonic acid is going to dry out the CO2 version a little bit more. You're going to get more drying sensation from the bubbles of the CO2, whereas the nitro version is just going to be very smooth. Get probably a little bit more of the chocolate character from the nitro version, and really, I mean, nitro beers were originated to kind of mimic the effect you get from cask conditioned beers.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think if you think of a cask conditioned beer and then Left Hand milk stout, that's really kind of what we're trying to do with that beer, is give it that kind of cask condition character.
Yeah, if you want to study the impact of what carbonation has on the flavor of something, take like a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi and degas it, shake it up and get all the bubbles out and let it go flat, and taste the difference between a flat Pepsi and a fresh carbonated Pepsi, and there's a world of difference between the two.
Yeah. So I guess a kind of the opposite example of one that we actually do differently is you mentioned our Belgian white nitro, which actually started as a homebrew recipe of mine.
Oh.
We do a limited amount of CO2 versions of that, and for the nitro versions, it's kind of built into the recipe that we add acidulated malt and then a little bit of lactic acid to give it that level of acidity so that it does pop on in the nitro version, and then we just back off on the amount of acid we add for the CO2 version. Nice.
And then as far as achieving balance in the milk stout formulation, practice, right? That's
yeah, I mean practice, but I'll give an interesting perspective on this beer. So we enter this when we enter it in competition. We enter it as an oatmeal stout because if you sample that beer, it is really not very sweet. There is definitely some sweetness there, but that's not like the primary character of this beer. It's actually quite roasty.
Mm-hmm.
And the lactose allows that beer to have all that roast character without it being overly dry, acrid. It just kind of smooths it out. So that's kind of the way I look at that particular beer. It just does not compete well as a sweet stout because the expectation for sweet stout is that it's going to be really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And this beer is more in line with other stouts. It's just that lactose gives it just that smoothness while maintaining all that roast character that you get from a really excellent stout.
Yeah, it's very drinkable.
So yeah, for milk stout we use about 9.5%. Is either between chocolate malt and roasted barley, and the lactose is about 7% of the if you incorporate that into the grain bill, it would amount to 7%. On the homebrew scale, it's going to be a little different. I'd probably up the roast level a little bit. We have a 60 barrel brew house, and for whatever reason, the larger the scale you're brewing on, the more impact you get from your specialty malts. So if you just took straight up our milk stout recipe and tried to brew with it, it probably won't give you the same results on a 5-gallon system.
Well, Stephen on Facebook said, "Left Hand Milk Stout recipe!" ! Exclamation point. It's out there, right? It
is.
It was in Zymergy a bit ago, right?
It may have been in Zymergy. It is currently on homebrewersassociation.org site. If you're an AHA member, you can access past seminars from HomebrewCon, and I gave a presentation at the 2023 Homebrewers Conference, and it is in there.
There you go.
So if you search for HomebrewCon 2023, you'll be able to find the seminar. Just look for the one by Gary Glass, and it is in there.
Membership.
It's towards the end of the PDF.
Membership has its privileges.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's shift gears. Are you ready to shift gears?
Sure.
Buckle up. Here we go. Kevin from Rural Hall, North Carolina, wrote via email, "What benefit will it be to AHA members now that y'all are no longer part of the Brewers Association? What will it mean for us?" as
I,
members?
I think what it will mean is that the staff and the board of the American Homebrewers Association will be able to be more attentive to the needs of the membership. As we talked about before, the job duties of the American Homebrewers Association, where it's shared Brewers Association employees, and they were spread very thin and not able to focus on just one area. And so this will give us more focus for the staff of the American Homebrewers Association to being attentive to the needs of the members.
Niles says, I'd like to know what the current AHA members can expect over the next year to 3 years from the newly independent AHA, kind of what you covered, and what Gary believes members can do to help make it an organization more people want to be a part of again. So what can the members do to help the AHA?
Yeah. I mean, certainly we've got limited resources with the number of people that we have on this transition team. And so I think what we're most going to need is we're going to need volunteers to help the organization. And this is how the organization ran back in the early 2000s. Like, all of the events were volunteer driven. And so much of what the organization did was really assisting homebrewers to be part of that community and facilitating the community. And so that, I think, we're looking to get back to more of that direct action from members. And I know that there's a link on the homebrewersassociation.org website for people to sign up and let us know that you're interested in participating. Like I said, really, definitely the events. So if somebody's looking to have HomebrewCon in their area, this is how we used to do it. Was we took bids from local homebrew clubs to try and get the event to their location, and they did a lot of the early legwork. Mm-hmm. So that's probably what it's going to look like. But we'll definitely have more information on what we're looking at for short term and long term. There's going to be a Zymergy Live event with the board and with Julia Hers on March 18th at 6 p.m. Pacific, or 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So look forward to that. And if you're a member of the American Homebrewers Association, you'll see it in your email. There'll be plenty of information coming out about that.
Excellent. Will asks this on Facebook, and I think we might have covered this. As former director of the AHA, then leaving the AHA, what are some of the reasons he separated his relationship with the AHA, and what reasons bring him back now that there's a separation from the BA?
Yeah, so as I explained, my separation from the AHA was not entirely voluntary. We were in the midst of COVID and working for a very event-driven organization, laid off 40% of the staff. So that was my separation from employment with the AHA. Now I've maintained close contact with the staff at the AHA since then. Particularly Julia Hers, longtime friend of mine and colleague at the Brewers Association. So really, really pleased that she ended up in the executive director role there. So we talk frequently. So kind of keep in touch. So I haven't really ever left, but obviously my day-to-day focus has been on brewing beers on a 60 barrel scale. So, but Julie actually reached out to me with my longtime experience as I would imagine there's probably a lot of homebrewers out there like, oh, this guy's a professional brewer. Why is he involved with the AHA? Well, I'm definitely I don't homebrew as much as I used to, but I still do. And I still have a very nice homebrew setup in my basement that I will try to be using more frequently. But most importantly, this is what I did for 14 years. I was the director of the AHA. The organization means a lot to me, and I want to see it succeed. And so Julia asked me to be a part of this new board of directors, and there's no way I could say no to that, because I want to make sure that the AHA, the members of the AHA are all in a good spot, and that this organization is around for the long term.
Jeremy you've heard of a compliment sandwich. This is kind of an open-faced compliment sandwich. And I cut off the last part I shortened Jeremy's question, but I didn't edit it. So I hope that I kept the gist of it in there just for time's sake. Jeremy says, what is the newly independent about them, separated from the BA, but still keeping the same old bad structure and attitude? Let me be clear. Here's the middle part of the sandwich. I've judged beer many times with Gary and his wife and think that they're lovely people. I've been president of a homebrew club in Colorado for years as well and got a complete brush off from Gary and the others at the AHA and decided never to support the AHA again. And if they've separated from the BA but haven't materially changed things, still a hard pass from me and anyone I talk to. So sounds like there's some issues there that you guys might need to work out.
It sure does. I don't recall what issue that is, but I did. Thank you for sending me the questions in advance, and I did go onto your Facebook page and found Jeremy and tried to message him directly through Facebook. So hopefully he sees this, got that message, and we can figure out what it is that he took issue with. I certainly want to get that ironed out if at all possible. So sorry if there was an issue with dealing with me in the past. I certainly don't want to hear that, and I want to try and make sure that we're addressing the issues of members to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and I hate to bring up a question like this where you're not really clued into what you don't know what happened, but it was out there on Facebook, so I thought that I'd give you a chance to
yeah, certainly. And if it's an opportunity for me to iron out some ongoing issue that I wasn't aware was an issue, then so much the better. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
The would-be brewmaster says, I'd ask Gary from his point of view, when did the AHA kind of go off the rails? I'm asking this as someone who has had a ton of respect for both Gary and Julia Herz. The decline in the hobby has certainly had an effect on the AHA, but I think they've lost a lot of people that are still brewing. So has the AHA gone off the rails? I mean, you said
that's probably not how I would choose to characterize it.
And you said that you haven't been, intimately involved with the AHA of late. So,
right, yeah. So, I do think you kind of as we talked about a little earlier, the state of homebrewing isn't what it was, 6-7 years ago. So I think there have been changes, and I mean, there's a reason why we're going this direction of separating with the Brewers Association, because as homebrewing has faced some challenges. Well, the world of small independent breweries has also faced dramatic challenges, and we're no exception to that. So it is not surprising to me that the Brewers Association was really needing to focus more on the BA side of things, which frankly was more of where the resources were in terms of revenue and in terms of execution. I mean, I think it just is at a point at which the Brewers Association was not in a good position to continue to be focused on the AHA, and Julia and our new board recognized that this was an opportunity to separate the organizations and to give to have people who could be exclusively focused on the American Homebrewers Association. So yeah. I'm excited for what's to come, and it's certainly going to be a pretty major challenge to execute this. So I know that my fellow board members are all in on making sure this succeeds, but it's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. And I certainly hope we're afforded some patience in the meantime as we go through the transition, because none of us who are involved in the organization have ever done this. So
yeah. Yeah.
It's new for us.
One more question from Facebook. Joshua says one of the historical core purposes of the AHA was universal legislation or legalization, which involves advocacy to government, the polite term for lobbying. Over the past 10 years or so, the AHA continued to claim advocacy as a core purpose, but made no real effort to push for the number one priority of members, allowing shipment via the U.S. Postal Service. I don't know if that's my number one priority, but that's just me editing. Okay. Sorry, Joshua. My assumption was that this was due to the shared government relations staff being BA employees and having other priorities on the brewer side. Now that the AHA is separating from the BA, what are the plans for advocacy work? Will it remain a core purpose? Will there be dedicated AHA advocacy staff? So, I mean, you guys did achieve success in legalizing or helping to legalize homebrewing across the entire United States. So we can't ignore that.
Right.
But something, like, for instance, making it legal to ship alcohol over the Postal Service, things mm-hmm. like that. Are there still right. hurdles that y'all are going to work on?
Yeah. I would say that it wasn't. I wouldn't characterize it as having been backburnered. It's just that federal legislation is a lot harder to deal with than state mm-hmm. legislation. And so when I was with the director of the American Homebrewers Association, I was very actively involved myself. We also had other staff members who were actively involved in state legislative issues. For a number of things, not just legalizing homebrewing, but also changing laws to allow for like competitions for bringing homebrew onto brewery premises, those kind of things. And in my experience, getting legislation passed on the state level was significantly easier. Access to legislators at the state level is much easier than the federal level. So it was something that the Brewers Association was actively working on, but there certainly were other federal issues as well. Dealing with the U.S. Postal Service in particular is pretty touchy, and that one's a pretty heavy lift. But it will still be. We actually talked about it during our board meeting that this was a priority for us. I hope that you afford us some patience there as well. And we in all of my time at the AHA, we never had anyone who was dedicated to solely dealing with legislative issues, but we always did have staff who that was part of their responsibilities.
Yeah, the federal government is a much bigger ship to try to turn on the course, and the with the Postal Service being sort of an independent organization on its own.
Yeah, it's a quasi-government organization.
Yeah, so kind of a different animal.
Yeah, it is. It is a different animal, but that is definitely something that we're going to be working towards. I would anticipate it's not going to be something that's going to happen in like 1 year. Hopefully it's something that we can build momentum for and get it over the finish line. But it's definitely like I said, that was really the one legislative issue that did come up during our board meeting as something that we do want to continue to work towards achieving.
So it's on the list.
And I would imagine we'll probably be working with the Brewers Association on this issue, even though we're separate organizations. Like I said, we have really close ties with the Brewers Association, and I think we can mutually we can work together in a mutually beneficial way. So I would anticipate we will continue to work with the Brewers Association, and at least on an advisory basis.
It seems like a shared goal. It seems like professional brewers would also like to have more options in shipping stuff.
Most definitely.
So, well, Gary, I'm out of questions, and I'm not out of beer. Luckily, I've got this darn rest of the day that I got to do stuff. I can't. I'll keep myself to this one beer and leave these others alone until later. But is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to get out there before we say goodbye?
I just, well, I guess look forward to more information from the American Homebrewers Association. I certainly hope that if you're not currently a member, that you would consider joining, because we're gonna need all the support we can get from homebrewers to make sure that this next path forward for the American Homebrewers Association is successful. So.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm rooting for you because, the Homebrewers Association has been from the very, I was in contact with the AHA when we first put our DVDs out, because on the back cover, I wanted to use a photograph of my medals, my homebrew medals, and they were, it was an AHA sponsored competition, so I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any conflict with rights or trademarks or anything like that. So I can't remember. Was it Cindy?
Cindy Jones?
Many years ago, who I was in contact with, and through her, we got to go to Charlie Papazian's house and interview him there, and we got access to. I said I went to 16 homebrew conferences and I didn't pay for any of them. We got press passes, so y'all have been very generous. And of course, the advertising support that you provided, I'm very, I'm a little bit biased as a journalist because, I've been a fan of the Homebrew Association for so many years, and y'all have supported us, and we've supported you. So, all that to say, I love you, man. No, that's it. I've only had half a beer. But I'm rooting for you, and best of luck, and let us know how we can help.
Yeah, thank you, James. Like I said, we really appreciate what you do for the hobby of homebrewing too. So I think we've had a mutually very beneficial relationship. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at a future HomebrewCon.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
Many thanks to Gary, and best of luck to everybody at the AHA again. Just a clarification, the AHA did give us press passes to the events, but we paid for travel, meals, lodging, etc. Or should I say our supporting listeners and our sponsors paid for all that, because we couldn't have done it without y'all. So many thanks to everybody who is chipping in. Oh, and thanks to everyone who submitted questions for Gary, and of course, thanks to Gary for being open to answer them all. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.